What's up everyone, Thrall's Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick and I have a collection update, and this will be the first collection update of the new year. Welcome to 2022. It probably looks a lot like 2021, but give it time to not suck. It might not suck. I don't know. So generally around this time when it comes down to collection updates, this is a lot of me covering stuff that I didn't get a chance to cover in terms of reviews or collection updates from 2021. So there's going to be a lot of carryover, and some of these are actually recommendations from you guys that I pretty much jammed and checked out. I can't remember who all suggested it because we get a lot of comments, but I'm reasonably sure a good chunk of this is courtesy of you guys. And of course, there's also just random stuff that I picked up just to patch up holes in my collection. And yeah, let's just get into this because wow, we are at 93 of these. I'm almost to 100. I might have a problem. I might not. I don't know. I don't think it's a problem. This is pretty awesome. Anyway, let's just get on with this. Thulcandra, A Dying Wish. 6-year wait in between albums from this German blackened melodic death metal act. We'll just call it Dissection Worship because that is exactly what Thulcandra is. Stefan Kummer was a very, very busy man this year with, you know, not only Thulcandra coming out with something, but also Obscura. And, well, I mean, it's kind of what I expected. There is a blue cover. They're all blue. They love blue. And these guys still love Dissection, and they play that style so damn well. This album, again, much like all of their albums, is just loaded with hooks and melodies. Excellent songwriting. I love the cold atmosphere, but it's very melancholy. It doesn't feel like very evil. It feels just sort of, I wouldn't call it depressive, but just somber, kind of across the board. But I also like the fact that they mix in a lot of aggression on here. Like, there are just really nasty, thrashy sections and flat out like death metal kind of chugathons on here, which overall I think that gives this album kind of a more focused feel to it. Like, this feels just really honed in on dynamics, songwriting hooks, bigger melodies, and this just is a flat-out whoop-ass album. I especially love the title track on here. I think that is one of the strongest tracks on an album that is loaded with strong tracks. Now, a knock on this is maybe it is a little bit on the long side, and you do have some bonus clips on here, some live tracks. Spirit of the Night, I think, is an awesome track. They do a killer live version on there, and I thought it was an in-studio version, but there's actually a crowd cheering, so I don't think they're the type to pump in crowd noise just to make it sound like a live track. I think that's actually a live track. And of course, because it's them, there is a cover of Night's Blood by Dissection, and of course, they nail it. Really awesome album. It was really cool to hear these guys come back. Again, busy year for Stefan. I am definitely looking forward to more from Thulcandra. A 6-year wait in between albums is definitely a long one, so hopefully the next wait isn't as long. But if you skipped over this one in 2021, kind of like I did, I've actually been sitting on this one for a while. Definitely check it out. If you love Dissection and you love Thulcandra's earlier works, you will definitely love this one. Check it out. Primitive Man Caustic. Their second album came out in 2017. This is a Denver-based sludge slash doom slash noise act. This is one of the heaviest bands I've ever seen live. I just recently saw them live with Blood Incantation, and wow, that is one of the heaviest bands I have ever seen. Like, literally, the guitar tone is so heavy, I think I felt my testicles rattle just ever so slightly. If not that, I'm reasonably sure a filling or two kind of just rattled their way out of my teeth. Holy shit, this is heavy. Caustic is literally the perfect word for this album. I had actually been hunting this one down for a while, but when I saw they were on tour with Blood Incantation, I figured this would be a perfect time to pick it up because I was reasonably sure they'd be selling it. And when I saw it on their table, I snagged it, and wow. Like, this is one of the most unwelcoming albums. Like, this album does not want you to like anything. This album is pretty much the sonic equivalent of a get the fuck out doormat on a haunted house. Everything on here is just sonically oppressive. Whether it's them slowing down to single droning notes and just bellowing over that, to just the heavy kind of death metal sections, to like crust punk sections on here, it doesn't matter because the amps are up to 11 at all times. And man, this is almost kind of like physically jarring to listen to. Like, there's almost sort of like a trance-like state you enter, like listening to something this heavy. Now, I don't like the drawn-out noise tracks because there's already enough noise in the actual tracks, and they do like to drone on single moments. And holy fuck, that feedback can be so goddamn loud on here. And I'm doing my best not to say dissonant because I think Jammin' John pretty much hit our quota of dissonant in his year-end list. But dissonant is a very accurate word. When it gets down to the heavy, brutal songs on here, it is flat out massive. Again, the noise tracks are either kind of just grating because they are noise tracks, or they're just flat out disturbing. The track Weight on here, there's a lot of fucked up noises going on. I'm reasonably sure I heard a woman scream. It sounded like a bunch of fucked up EVPs being played inside of a dumpster on a recorder. Like, they're very echoey, very disturbing, just shrieking and feedback. And I get it, that adds to the atmosphere and the overall caustic nature of this album called Caustic. But holy shit, sometimes it's a bit much. But overall, I really dug this. I like Immersion a little bit more than this one. I think it's a little bit more focused and to the point. This one, while it does meander a bit into just noisy soundscapes of hell, that's got to be it. It's really good. I strongly recommend this if you're looking for some of the heaviest, most oppressive music out there. Primitive Man is currently writing it. I'm sure they're actually working on a new one that'll probably fuck me up sonically too. But definitely check this one out. Check out all their stuff, honestly. This is just a nasty, heavy band, and yeah, check it out. Decrepisy, Emetic Communion. It's the debut full-length from this Portland death metal act. I know, Portland death metal, that's crazy. There's literally no death metal bands there at all, right? Anyway, this includes members of Ascended Dead, Ritual Necromancy, and Void Ceremony, and holy shit, this is some heavy old school death metal. And I was a little taken back in terms of the style. Like, it definitely has that, you know, Portland, Pacific Coast sort of death metal, like very retro sound. But there's a lot of thrash to the riffs. Like, there's some serious Slayer bite to some of these riffs, but they play at mostly sort of a mid-tempo stomp, so like Autopsy doing Slayer covers, which sounds like a good fucking time anyway. Now, while I think this guitar tone definitely has a bit of a thrashy sizzle to it, they love big death doom moments, especially the opening track, Dissipating Form. It's just gross, murky, and slow, and that's pretty much everything I love about death doom right there. There's loads of groove on here. I like the melodies. The melodies are catchy, but they remain sinister, especially you get that on the title track on here. I just think that it has, again, like a hook, but a very distinct kind of hook, and it lends itself to the very just gross, evil sounding atmosphere in here, which is just foul across the board. Now, this came as a recommendation from one Dreadful Rick over at the Dreadful Minutes. Again, definitely check out his channel. He brought this up to me in a live stream, and I literally ordered it right there. So I've been actually sitting on this one for a while too and listening to it, and holy shit, he was right. And I think that pretty much just sprouted in a conversation about how badass Portland death metal is, and this is yet another killer example. If you have not checked this out, this is a nasty death metal release. Don't know if it could have been on my year-end list, but holy shit, it's fucking good, so definitely check it out. Grand Cadaver, Into the Maw of Death. This is the debut full-length from this death metal supergroup that features current and ex-members of Dark Tranquillity, Tiamat, Catatonia, and In Mourning. This is pretty much just straight up Stockholm death metal. This is very much in the vein, of course, Entomb, Dismember, but also Bloodbath. Now, one really cool thing that definitely drew me in on here was they have Michael Stan on vocals from Dark Tranquillity, and hearing him take on a more brutal approach overall versus what he usually does in Dark Tranquillity, which occasionally includes clean vocals, fuck cleans on here. This is all really nasty, a little bit more low register growls, and musically this just captures everything I love about HM2 death metal. This is just nasty, to the point, riff driven as hell. Not a lot of mellow death to be found here at all. Most of the hooks on here are just sinister and heavy as hell, but these guys know how to craft clever songs. And with Bloodbath kind of being MIA for a little bit now, there are a lot of HM2 bands out there coming out with killer stuff. Now, this also includes their debut EP, Madness Comes, and that is also amazing as well. When it comes down to production too, they kind of have a good mix of modern production, a little bit of that classic, you know, Sunlight Studio sound too. The guitar tone on here is particularly thick, super well mixed, and for as raw and sort of just, you know, caveman-esque in terms of like the approach on here, there's a lot of cool dynamics. The bass intro and Cold Dead Light especially, I fucking love that. And I absolutely love the main riff on Soul Infestation. This was pretty much one that once I had jammed it all the way through, I want to see this band live. Now, granted, with all the other guys in other bands or, you know, just being session musicians, gonna be kind of tough, but if they do manage to get together and get here to the States, I am so fucking on board. Definitely check this out. This is one that I believe one of you guys recommended, and holy shit, you guys know I'm a giant slut for HM too, so yeah, you nailed me. You got me on a box in this one. This was an instant love. So thank you guys to whoever recommended this. This album is badass. I'm so happy to have it in my collection. I've been jamming the shit out of it. And for any of you guys that have not checked it out, definitely check it out. All right, we have a pair here, and this pair of CDs was actually sent to us by this band. This is Overwrought, and this is their debut EP, Volatility, and their full-length debut, The Abyss Stares Back. Now, this is a melodic black metal act from Washington State, and these guys got a hold of us and asked me if I would check out their release, and they actually sent copies for all the thralls, so thank you guys very much for that, as well as patches too, which is pretty damn cool. But anyway, it's really interesting to hear the progression between these two because there's a lot of progression. Now, this EP is only 2 tracks long and is definitely more raw. Now, these are both self-released and definitely more like raw in general just because it's not like a big studio production, but they sound really good. This one is definitely the more raw of the two. Definitely a bit of like a dissection worship on here. Pretty decent songwriting, though. I think some of the songs kind of meander a bit, but I think the strongest out of the two is definitely the song Labor on here. Really solid offering, but this one whooped ass. I really enjoyed this one. This one surprised me on a lot of levels because while it has elements that are on here, at least the bass sound, this one gets really adventurous. There's kind of a progressive flair. Songs will kind of switch gears often to like thrashier sections, almost kind of death metal. There's like some D-beat stomps in some parts, but you still have this really good melodic black metal atmosphere to it. There's lots of melodic tremolos, really good lead work on here. I think this is just a huge step up, almost to the point where it almost kind of sounds like a different band. They really just branched out this sound massively. I think a big thing on this one versus this one is riff work too. The riffs stand out. They're very catchy. It doesn't rely heavily on just all dissonant tremolos. And the bass work on here all of a sudden just really stood out. Like, it cuts through the mix. There's really cool melodies and noodles that they're doing. And again, that sort of progressive technical flair that's on here, especially in the songs Vigil and Lower Power. The opening to that is very proggy sounding. I just really dug that, kind of like Enslaved a little bit. I really wasn't expecting that from this one. Like, this is such a huge leap from this one, and I think that makes it really interesting. I don't think this one's bad at all, but holy shit, this is kind of light years beyond it. Definitely check this out. Thank you, Overwrought, for sending us this. This is really awesome stuff. I am definitely intrigued to hear where you go from this one because I think this is quite an album. I'm looking forward to hearing what the other guys think about it too. I haven't really had a lot of contact with them because, you know, holidays and whatnot. But yeah, great stuff. Definitely check out both of these. I strongly recommend this one. This is still good too, but this is really just fantastic. So yeah, definitely check them out. Benothing, Temporal Bliss, Surrealms. This is the debut EP from this Finnish death metal band. This actually features ex-Rotten Sound bassist Christian Toivonen. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, but he's actually on guitars here, and holy shit, this is some great Finnish death metal. Kind of just, you know, checks off everything that I like about Finnish death metal. It's murky, kind of doomy. The songwriting here is really, really awesome. I love all the cool guitar work on here. Very swampy guitars. The lead melodies are just kind of atonal and ugly. I kind of wondered if Atmosphere could be described as slimy. That might be accurate in here. it just feels filthy. I felt like there should have been some ooze that came out of my CD player after I played this. There's definitely a lot of really cool, fun riffs, especially on Engrossed Inside Compulsions. But I think the weirdest part of this just strange, ugly album is the last track, at least the end of it. Awesome song to start off with, and it's just hook-laden as hell. Love the riff work. And then, I don't know, somewhere towards the end, the acid kicked in and it just gets full bore spacey and weird. The synths kind of come up. There's also like a lot of like weird soundscapes in the background. Very strange ending to an otherwise very just riff-centric, ugly death metal album. But overall, this is a flat-out banging EP. I saw this was coming out on Everlasting Spew. I jammed one track, and that is literally all it took. And again, my love of Finnish death metal, or let's be honest, death metal in general, I had to fucking check this out, and it did not let me down in the least. So, solid debut from this band. Definitely check out this EP. It is fucking nasty. Honestly, it's good enough that if I had a couple more EPs, I could have extended my best EPs list to probably 15 and included this. It's that fucking good. Definitely check it out. Bull Thrower, Who Dares Wins. It's a reissue of a compilation of B-sides and some live tracks, essentially, from legendary Bull Thrower. I didn't own this, and I only got it for a few songs, honestly. Crown of Life, Overlord, and the 1994 version of World Eater. All of them are flat out awesome. The rest of these tracks I actually had on the reissues of Bull Thrower albums that I already had. They're awesome because they were written by Bull Thrower. That's generally enough for me. But those main tracks there, especially Crown of Life, holy shit, that song's awesome. But yeah, pretty much just got it because I love Bull Thrower, and so should you. So definitely check this out. Sulphurous and the Black Mouth of Sepulchre. This is the second album from this two-man Danish project. Both members are in Hyperdontia, and this is kind of similar to Hyperdontia, though I think the production is a bit different from this band's first album. This is a little bit cleaner, and I gotta say, like, the guitars feel a little bit crunchier, possibly more technical, but in terms of, like, the style they play, it is a very Morbid Angel-centric style. In fact, this really reminds me a lot of Steve Tucker era Morbid Angel, especially Gateways and Formulas, Fatal to the Flesh. Lots of creepy atmosphere, solid riff work, really great, just kind of dismal sounding atmosphere, but also kind of technical and, I don't know, maybe like a little bit progressive in some sense. The songs are a little bit longer, occasionally kind of drawn out, but there's a lot of cool, like, more technical play to them, or at least more dynamics. The song Shadows Writhing Like Black Wings. I particularly love that one. Of course, it is driven by a nasty triplet chug, and I'm a sucker for that, but a lot of other cool stuff going on there, but that triplet chug is definitely a great lead-in hook. Now, while I like all the guitar work and the fact that maybe it is a little bit more technical, it kind of can be a blur of riffs sometimes, and that kind of makes some of the songs not stand out as much. They kind of just blur one into the other, but it's kind of a good blur because I really like what they're doing. This is a solid album. I can't decide if I like their debut a little bit more, but overall this delivers some pretty damn solid death metal, and if you have not checked out this band, I strongly recommend checking them out because both their albums are pretty damn good. So yeah, check it out. Umbra Vitae, Shadow of Life. This is the debut album from this death metal supergroup from Boston featuring, Jacob Bannon from Converge, Sean Martin, ex-Hatebreed, John Rice, formerly of Jaffa Cowboy, and I believe a litany of other bands at this point, and Mike Gunface McKenzie and Greg Weeks, both of the Red Chord. And this is pretty much their attempt at straight up death metal, though I don't think straight up death metal is exactly what it is. Inevitably, when Jacob Bannon is growling his guts out over D beats and chuggy riffs and Kurt Ballew's production, it kind of sounds like Converge. Kind of can't really help that. His delivery really doesn't change. He doesn't get like low death metal vocals, but he does have Mike McKenzie doing really good low guttural vocals behind him to back him up. But this definitely still sounds like Converge, except with like definitely a lot of like Dismember and Entombed Worship kind of like breaking up the more hardcore moments. Now, Kurt Bowler's production, much like Kurt Bowler's production, I think is fucking awesome. I especially, again, love the way he gets drums to sound on here. They just absolutely fucking pummel you on here. And this album is high energy as hell, so you're gonna get lots of blasts, D beats. John Rice puts on a killer performance on here. But again, with Jacob Bannon singing, or growling rather, and the fact that these are short songs and almost still very hardcore oriented, this still kind of feels more along the lines of metalcore, but with death metal moments kind of shoehorned in. I like this, but I want to hear more of the death metal side on here, because I think they kind of went to the comfort zone with the more core style in there. Now, I get that. That is kind of the background of most of these guys, but I just want to hear more death metal. Like, I think these guys definitely have the chops. The riffs are definitely there. I just need to hear more of it. But overall, this is a solid debut, and I mean, you have a lot of talented musicians here, so it really didn't surprise me that this was actually pretty damn good. So if you have not jammed this one, definitely check it out. Again, I want a little bit more death metal in the future in terms of their sort of hybrid style, but I'm still satisfied with what I got here. So check it out. Nervosa Agony, the second album from this Brazilian-based thrash metal / death thrash act. I don't know, I like their style. Their last album just made my year-end list, and this one, I like this one. It is hyper-aggressive, riff-driven, in-your-face, no pretense, just launches right into it, which I absolutely love. I find that kind of refreshing since everyone wants to put a fucking intro on their album. But for all the aggression on here, which that's every track, and it's kind of, you know, either thrash metal aggression, a little bit of death thrash or death metal in here, like at least in terms of like Possessed, especially in the song Deception, it does feel a little bare bones. Like once you have got to about the halfway point on this, which this is 12 tracks, you've almost heard everything on here. At least for the bulk of the tracks in terms of their main style. There isn't much in the riff wheelhouse on here, but still those kind of samey riffs that they play are still like thrash metal staples. Like, you know, they're just doing everything I like about thrash metal, and especially like a really aggressive style of thrash metal. Definitely a lot of Slayer worship. I would say a lot of stuff that is very similar to Creator. But the track that really kind of caught me off guard was the last track, Wayfarer, which is a bonus track, but it features, well, Sabbathy riffs, really impressive, clean vocals, like almost kind of like a bluesy, jazzy sort of delivery too. Like they're very sultry, a really kind of gritty vibrato to them, and then in between there, she's doing like her shrieks and such, which is very, very impressive. But it's such a wildly different track. I can see why it's a bonus track in here, because it really would not fit in on this album at all other than a bonus track. This is a good release. I like it. It maintains the high energy across the board, but this one I needed to hear like a little bit more variety. I think their newer album definitely showcases more work in terms of like catchier melodies and such. This raw meat and potatoes, but who doesn't like meat and potatoes? They're delicious. This is just sort of a big serving of the same thing. It's like going to the buffet and getting the same meat and the same potatoes each time. A little variety, but still good album. Recommend checking it out. It's thrashier in hell, and if you love that sort of shit, this will probably be your thing. So check it out. Absorption, Enveloping Womb of Astringent Void. Another one that came out this year that I did not know about until I went distro diving once again and found this on Hell's Headbangers. This is a Russian-based death metal act, and very murky, very dissonant, lots of atmosphere, but it's also very riffy. It kind of has like an odd flow. Like it starts off kind of as one thing with more that atmospheric tremolo, almost kind of Black and Death, and then you get to like much riffier sections. But the thing that I really liked in here is the frontman has a very Ackerfeld-ish delivery. Like it's that very well enunciated deep growl, and because the production on the vocals is a lot clearer than like literally anything else in this is kind of a murky listen. The vocals just kind of stand in the front of the mix, and again, being very clear, like you can actually make out most of what he's saying, which is actually kind of refreshing. Now again, this album is sort of an interesting journey. It starts off again more atmospheric, but when you get down to a song like Mental Secretion, which I don't know what that is, but it sounds gross, It actually kind of takes on a more melodic approach and has like this big like 90s death metal groove to it. It just feels like it crawled out of the Florida Everglades in the 1990s and then made its way to Tampa. Now, I really enjoyed this album, but I thought the last track was kind of odd, Miasmas of Boiling Ashes. That kind of feels like two songs sandwiched together. In fact, it sounds like the first part of the song fades out and then it just picks up into a completely different song halfway through. I kind of would have liked to have seen those like separated into two tracks and maybe just, I don't know, find a way to change that fade out, because that fade out seems like it comes at a point where the riff is still really interesting and it kind of needs something to close on rather than just fading out on that riff maybe a little prematurely. But overall, this was a pretty solid listen. I really dug this. I kind of just picked this one up on a whim, much like I do with a lot of shit, and I ended up enjoying it, which honestly has something to do with a lot of shit as well. So if you like your death metal kind of grimy, atmospheric, but still riffy and kind of melodic, I mean, that checks off a lot of boxes for a lot of death metal. But if you like that, definitely check this out. Proscriptor McGovern's Apsu, A-P-S-U now. This is the newest album from, well, Proscriptor McGovern, and essentially a new lineup for Absu, but it's Apsu now. There's a lot of controversy circling this, and I'm going to get into it, but I definitely want to get into legit how musically badass this is. I'm a longtime Apsu fan, Texas-based, like kind of occultish blackened thrash, I guess you could call it. It's never really screamed like satanic, it's always like divinations and rituals and shit. I don't know what they're conjuring, but it's not specifically evil. I don't know, it might be. But I've always dug their sound. I think they have tight riff work, their songs are well constructed. I absolutely love their style, so when I saw this was coming out before I knew about all the other shit, I was definitely excited to hear that. Proscriptor McGovern is a amazing drummer and a really solid vocalist in here, and I love how technical but riffy this is. Like, there's a lot of really cool technical play that's almost on par with bands like Atheist on here. And I think a lot of that is due to new guitarist Daniel Gonzalez, which he goes by some cryptic weird name on here, because if you're an Apsu, you have a cryptic weird name. But the riff work on here is unfucking believable, and Proscriptor's drum work is absolutely fantastic across the board. I loved every single track on here. It is tight, it is aggressive as hell, and the songs are just extraordinarily well written. This album really doesn't bother with a lot of pretense either. There's definitely some more atmospheric sections, but most of the time it is high octane and just faster than hell. This actually reminds me of Sadus, except with like a black metal influence on it. Absolutely love this album. It's fantastic when it comes down to music. And unfortunately, the thing that I don't like is the shit surrounding it now. The split of Apsu was pretty shitty, honestly. Proscriptor sent a bunch of texts about now Melissa Moore's transition and how that tarnished his legacy, which honestly has nothing to do with him. That's ridiculous. Melissa made her choice, and that is perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong. And honestly, Apsu could have continued if he had just got by it. I don't know what his deal was. It just seems very selfish, arrogant. I don't know. I don't like it. It's just dumb. It's pretty much just a case of get the fuck over it and move on, because I think Apsu could have continued on if he had just kind of just moved past it, because you still have that person in the band. It's just now they're a different gender. So fucking what? You still have an awesome guitarist in there, a bandmate that has been with you for a long fucking time, and still someone that he, even in these text messages that I read, regards as a good friend. So I don't know, but at the same time, I like Daniel Gonzalez's guitar work in here too. I still would have liked to have seen this just been an Apsu release, but I don't know. I don't like that aspect of it. It is shitty and it kind of just bugs me, but musically, I have no gripes on this. I think this is really fucking good, and honestly, if I had jammed it much earlier, it could have been on my year-end list. But musically, I strongly recommend this, without a doubt. If you have some hang-ups about Proscriptor's behavior, which I don't blame you, because it is kind of shitty, I could totally see why you wouldn't want to jam this or support it anyway. I picked it up just because, again, longtime Apsu fan, and I wanted to hear this. And this did not let me down one fucking bit. In fact, I think it raises the game on some levels. So definitely check this out. It is a solid listen, but again, if you don't want to, I understand. Eternal Rot, Putridarium. This is the second album from this UK/Poland Death Doom act. This is some filthy, disgusting, very cavernous death doom. And honestly, it has been a while since I heard an album that generated so much atmosphere with practically just the vocals. The vocals on this album are fucking horrifying. They don't even sound fucking human. There's so much reverb and layering and deep gurgling, whispers, groans. This album's haunted or possessed. I don't know. It's fucking gross. Now behind that, the music on here is, I would say, maybe a little bit more on the doom side. Like there's a lot of old Sabbathy riffs, definitely some like Candlemass like sort of, grooves in there. But when it comes down to like death metal riffs, they're used a little bit more sparingly. And when it comes down to the songwriting, it is maybe like a little caveman-ish. Like it is really just kind of hammering just big, nasty, doomy riffs with not a tremendous amount of nuance. It's kind of caveman death doom, if that's the thing. If it is, I'm kind of for it because the overall results in here are pretty damn solid. But honestly, again, it's the fucking vocals on here that make this just a super unsettling, disgusting listen. Now, I've been listening to these guys for a while, but it was most of their first album, which I'm still looking for on CD, but I saw this one in, I believe, Hell's Headbangers Distro, and I had to snag it, and wow, dude, just gross sounding. If you love death doom and you love vocals that sound like a dude gargling 40-weight fucking engine oil in a subway tunnel, then this is your album. Definitely check this out. It's fucking gross, and again, I don't think I've ever heard a death doom album that generated so much atmosphere with just the vocals. I think that really makes this stand out for me. So yeah, definitely check it out. Skinless, Progression Towards Evil. This is the 1998 debut from this New York brutal death metal act. This is a reissue that came out this year on Corpse Gristle / Burning Dogma Records. And kind of wish they did a little bit more with this reissue. Like, it is a very, very simple gatefold. But honestly, this is the only Skinless album I was missing, so I jumped at the chance. And I have jammed this debut, on YouTube, and fucking, I knew buddies that had it in the past. And this is just gross, old school, brutal death metal. Very much in the vein of like early Suffocation, but with a lot of like Cannibal Corpse, like sort of like thrashy chugs to it. The vocals on here are especially good. I really like the almost kind of like deeper Corpse Grinder like delivery. Like it's a very powerful growl kind of shout. Now, this album I think is a little bit different from a lot of their other stuff just in terms of the samples and the songs, essentially, because there's a little bit more weird sexual stuff on here, especially when it comes down to the samples, but there's also a lot of humor on here. They actually sampled the whole Robert Tilton farting preacher YouTube shit from years ago, which that still makes me giggle, mostly because I'm immature as hell. But there's a lot of like more sexually sort of explicit song titles in here versus the flat out more brutal stuff that kind of came out on every album afterwards. So it is a little different there. That really doesn't bother me at all. In fact, it's done in such a tongue-in-cheek way. It's just kind of goofy. But musically, I think this is just a flat-out killer debut. Has all the hallmarks of everything I love about 90s death metal. I think the production on it's pretty damn solid. This might be a remaster. I did not check, but overall it sounds really good. The snare has a little bit of that sort of brutal death metal plunk to it, but it's not overbearing at all. The guitars are very crisp on here. The riff work is solid. There's loads of groove on here. Again, some of the song titles like Tampon Lollipops, and holy shit, what a fucking weird intro to that track. I'm gonna try to find the full album in terms of like a link down in the description, but if I can't find a full album, I might just go with that one because of how fucked up that intro is. I gotta give him points for originality on that one. But yeah, this is an absolutely killer debut. If you've never jammed Skinless, this is not a bad place to start. I still believe Trample the Weak, Hurdle the Dead is probably the one I would recommend to everyone in terms of just the most brutal offering they have, but this is just damn good old school brutal death metal, and if you like shit like that, definitely check this out. Abhorrence, completely vulgar. This is the 2011 compilation of their early works, namely their 1990 demo and 1991 EP, and well, after that the band kind of split up for a long period of time. Now this pretty much comes with, again, those tracks plus a bunch of bootlegged live tracks, in terms of like they sound like they were recorded on a tape recorder right next to the PA, and it's muffled, you can't really make out much, but I don't know, there's sort of like a nostalgic kind of coolness to that. I don't know why. But these guys are straight up old school Finnish death metal, very much in the vein of early Amorphous and Sentenced. I gotta say the vocals are a little bit more mid-range from what I'm used to with most Finnish death metal, because a lot of Finnish death metal has super low vocals, like not all like Demolish low, because that's a whole other categorization of low vocals, but they are a little bit more mid-range, at least for this band, which I think is kind of interesting. It kind of makes it stand out a bit. But it does have, you know, the Finnish death metal tropes I love. It's very raw, it's very doom-laden, especially the song Holy Laws of Pain, that has such a monster riff on it. I do have some complaints about the mix, but again, it was like, you know, demos and early EPs in the 90s. When it came down to blast beats on here, the bass drum almost completely disappears. Like, it almost sounds like he's not even playing the bass drum while doing blast beats, because as soon as he stops, instantly it's audible again, like he's kicking the shit out of it. So I don't know if that's just a mixing issue or maybe that was a style thing, but it took away a lot of the punch of those blast beats. Now there is a bit of a difference between the EP and the demo. I think the demo is a little bit doomier and definitely more raw, and I kind of like that a little bit better. It still has a lot of the same issues in terms, I think the bass drum kind of does disappear during blast beats on that. Again, that might just be a style, but I kind of like the more gritty feel because I think it lends itself to the doomier stuff. I've been looking for this for a while because I picked up their last album or EP, which is one word that I cannot spell or pronounce, even though it is in English. It sounds completely fucking made up. I don't know, it's on par with like anti-disestablishmentarianism. Like, that's just a ridiculously long word, and they picked one almost as long for that album. But I like that one. I thought that was a really cool album. But looking around, I saw that they had earlier stuff and I wanted to check it out. And this is pretty solid stuff. Definitely more raw and gritty, but I kind of like raw and gritty, so it kind of worked for me. If you've never heard of these guys, this is not a bad place to start. This came out on Svart Records. This is a reissue, so you should be able to find this one. If not, I recommend their other album that I can't pronounce or spell or any of that shit, because that is a ridiculous word. But that's also really good too. Maybe a little bit more pristine in terms of the production. But yeah, definitely check this out. It's raw, gritty, old school shit, and I love that. Heavy Sentence, Bang to Rights. It's the debut album from this UK heavy metal act, and man, have I heard a lot of chatter about this. So much so that I had to pick it up, and I mean, I can see why. This is very retro heavy metal, but it's kind of a different kind of retro. Like, a lot of retro heavy metal definitely wants to go after that early, you know, Iron Maiden sound or like Angel Witch. These guys kind of want to blend that, except throw in Motorhead. This sounds a lot like Motorhead, but Motorhead mixed with like Tank. There's definitely more melody on here, but this has that punky, dirty D-beat sound that's, you know, just 100% Motorhead. This is gritty and in your face, but also melodic and catchy. So they found this really cool balance, and that is what really kept me coming back. The vocals are fiercely Lemmy-ish. I really like that. I would say they are a little bit cleaner than Lemmy. Like, there's definitely a little bit more like vibrato to it. Maybe again, kind of like Tank. But what I really love on here is the songwriting, the riffs, the harmonies. There are fucking harmonies all over the place, and I'm a sucker for that, especially when it comes down to like retro, old school heavy metal. I just think that kind of is one of the things that makes that sound for me. And while the vocals are, you know, catchy in their own right, a lot of the melody is carried by the guitars. I like that this is also kind of varied. Like, you get some slower songs that are like slower builds, but you get a lot of faster songs, especially Age of Fire. Holy shit, that song whoops ass. It's upbeat, it's riffy, and it's just pure fucking fun. This album wants to get a beer with you and maybe follow that with like 8 or 9 shots and throw up in the alley and fucking hit up another bar and repeat the process. That is pretty much this album. It's just pure fun, an awesome throwback. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I can definitely see why there's a lot of hype around this. So if you've never jammed this one, definitely check it out. It is a fucking throwback, and a throwback done super, super fucking well. Definitely check it out. Oxygen Destroyer. And forgive me, I have to read this off my paper here because they wrote a fucking novel for a title. Sinister monstrosities spawned by the unfathomable ignorance of mankind. Jesus Christ, guys. This is the second album from the Seattle-based Blackened Death Thrash act, and there are two things that I absolutely love in this world. It is fucking metal and Godzilla, and these guys love both. This is kaiju-worshipping Blackened Death Thrash. And in terms of a combination of styles, holy shit, these guys do it really well. You get all the hallmarks of all those styles blended almost seamlessly into one hyper fast, just unruly listen. This is so hyper blast beat, fucking tremolo riffing and like thrash chugging forward, except for maybe the last track, Their Reign Has Begun. That one actually slows it down a little bit, but this is just fast, relentless, kind of blackened, shrieked vocals. This is just non-stop. So I can really get the whole non-stop energy because it isn't as though anything can stop Godzilla. Maybe another monster, but no, his record's pretty fucking solid. Now, I love the debut from these guys, but I think this one's even better. I think the production's a lot tighter on here. I think all the music really stands out. It's mixed very evenly. And while it's kind of one gear, I like this gear. This gear is like pretty much keeping my adrenaline peaked, and plus at the same time, it's Godzilla themed. How the fuck am I not gonna love that? That's just fucking awesome. Absolutely love this album. I think it is definitely better than their first one. Their first one's also whoop ass. They actually commented on a collection update when I went over that one, and those guys seem super cool, and you know, I'd like to sit back and bullshit Godzilla with them. I think that would be a fun fucking conversation. I'll go through all the fucking movies. I've even seen the Mothra ones. They're fucking terrible, but I've seen them. So yeah, if you love Blackened Death Thrash, or yeah, no, that. If you love that and Godzilla, holy shit, check this out. It's fucking awesome. Sepulchre, I think that's how you pronounce that. Ascent through Morbid Transcendence. This is the debut EP from this French death metal act that features ex-members of Cadaveric Fumes, Destroyer 666, and Skelefall. This is nasty old school death metal that honestly sounds like it could have been part of the whole Pacific Coast scene here. Actually, a lot of this reminded me of Witch Vomit. Old school vibes, lots of, you know, DB kind of autopsy worship. It is grimier than hell, maybe a little bit compressed. Like, I think they could have let it breathe a little bit in terms of the reverb, but musically this really latches onto that early 90s death metal sound, maybe a little bit of late 80s death metal sound, because there's still some thrashy roots to some of this. Fucking disgusting. I really dug every track on here. This is a short offering though. It is only 4 tracks, and I think it's barely 20 minutes. If not, it's still kind of under 20 minutes. About the 20-minute range. That's what I'm getting at. But I liked every track. Every track on here whooped ass. It's packed with killer riffs, killer grooves, and I flat out dug it. I really wish I could say more, but again, it's kind of a short offering. But again, if you like Pacific Coast death metal, especially, you know, like, again, Witch Vomit, definitely check this out. Solid listen. And finally, we have Employed to Serve, Conquering. This is their 4th studio album. This is a UK-based hardcore / metalcore act. And I actually got into them on the album before this. I really enjoyed it, and it kind of caught me off guard because I had kind of been out of the whole metalcore thing for a while, at least in terms of picking up new bands. And when I heard that album, I was like, wow, this is really solid. This album, I think, is even better. This is another one that I think if I extended my list to like top 50, it might have squeaked in, because if more metalcore was like this, I think I would get into this. Very inventive. There's a lot of thrash metal and death metal thrown in there, but this is definitely big hardcore roots. I love the opening melody on Universal Chokehold, the opener. Like, it really just kind of sets up the song, and I guess on this one they were really influenced by thrash metal bands, and you could really hear that there's like thrashy sort of, you know, energy to a lot of this stuff. But when you get to songs like Exist, that sounds like a late 80s, early 90s hardcore anthem, like driven by gang vocals and vocal trade-offs between the front woman and the guitarist or bassist. Might have been the drummer, I don't know, someone else that's not her. I feel like they really pushed themselves on this album. Like, I like the last one. It is not really standard fare because I still think it's wildly inventive. This is still inventive in terms of like the riff structure, the song structure, but I think they pushed themselves a little bit for melody and hooks as well as just bone-crunching heaviness on here. I was actually really surprised there was a fair amount of clean vocals on here, but it's actually not the front woman doing them, it's one of the backup vocalists, which that really kind of adds a cool dynamic too, because she's growling her fucking guts out here, and you get these really cool kind of croons in the background. The entire time I was listening to this, I was pretty much thinking, like, man, if Code Orange actually sounded like this and didn't sound, well, like Code Orange, I'm not really a fan of that band. I like the fact that they like to try a lot of different stuff. Not all of it works. This is a band that tries a lot of different stuff, but they know how to homogenize it into one main sound, so there's sort of a universal feel to the entire album, and it works here. I think this is an absolutely badass album. I strongly recommend checking this out. Again, if more metalcore sounded like this, I think I would probably get into more metalcore. This band definitely knows how to keep that sound fresh. If you've never jammed this band before, well, I don't know. I mean, in terms of where to start, I don't know what the first two albums sound like. I still haven't got those, but I would say this is a damn good place to start. Maybe just work backwards, because I think this is possibly their best album yet. So definitely check this out. This album really kind of caught me off guard with how much it whooped ass. So yeah, hopefully it gives you the same effect too if you have not jammed it yet. All right, that knocks out the first collection update of 2022. Already working on the next one. Already got some stuff in the mail. Kind of spent some Christmas money on gift cards. So pretty much patch up again stuff that I missed in 2021, and I'm already eyeballing stuff that's coming out this month and next month. I think we're going to get off to a good start. I mean, already with new Voivod and new Immolation coming out. Man, dude, this has the makings to be a really good year. If COVID fucking releases its goddamn chokehold, it has to let up at some point, right? Anyway, plenty of cool stuff coming up on this channel. We're definitely going to get back to like a Thrall's Roundtable sort of thing. Hopefully doing some more live streams. We are about to shoot the Entombed ranking. We got a little kind of sidetracked, of course, you know, holiday stuff. We got to spend time with our families and such. And yeah, we kind of tried to schedule around that, but we're going to get it shot here soon. And then after that, well, I'd say stay tuned to the end of that video, because we're probably making an announcement about the next rankings. So if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. If you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do stuff like this all the time. We are also on Patreon. If you'd like to help us out there, there will be a link down below. We do have t-shirts for sale. I would say hold off for a little bit, because we are working on something very special for a new t-shirt. So we will definitely be making an announcement in the future about that. And well, of course, thank you guys. This has been an awesome journey. We've made it another year. We've been at this for 3 years, and holy shit, this has been an amazing ride. I know I gush at the end of every fucking video, but I mean it. You guys are awesome. Thank you so fucking much. And with that, I will cease the gushing and just say, catch you later.